Okay, so today we're going to be creating the color wheel, and so we have our watercolor paper, so we have a nice thick paper to use. I have some paintbrushes to paint with. I have my acrylic paint and at least the 3 primary colors, yellow, red, and blue, because we can make all the colors. I have my water, okay? And I have something to trace around, like another paper plate that's smaller or a bowl, okay, that we can put down here and trace around, just so we have a circular shape to start our paper plate. My place is covered, so I know I'm not going to make a mess. And for today, I actually have a tube so I can trace around as well. I'll show you what I'm going to do with that later. So the first thing with the color wheel, if you saw my examples of the color wheel, is that the color wheel is actually a chart. And it's a great place to do some skill building in order to learn about how to mix colors with acrylic paint. And so I'm going to take my bowl here, and I'm going to take a pencil so I don't get permanent marker on my mom's bowl. You're going to just trace around something that's circular. It doesn't have to be huge, but this just kind of gives me a little chart of how I want to separate my colors here. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to be putting some of colors in here, and I'm going to take my shape. I want to make it into like a flower petal, so I'm actually going to pinch one side of my toilet paper tube, and that's going to give it kind of a flower petal shape. Okay, so it's round on this side and pointing on this side. You can make any shape you want. So you guys are just watching this right now, and so you can figure out how and what you would like to do with this. And for this, I'm going to do this in permanent marker. You guys could do this in pencil too, but just so you can see for the camera's sake, I'm doing this in permanent marker. So I'm going to trace a shape here, and then I'm going to go across and trace a shape here, because in a color wheel, objects are usually across from each other. Now, so this goes straight across. There's my flower petal. Make sure I have my little point here. Little fat flower petals, that's all right. Okay, and they don't have to be perfect. Now, in this extra space I have here, I'm going to do 2. So I want them to kind of be evenly spaced. So I'm going to put one here. And one here. And this is going to be for our primary and secondary colors. Actually, these look more like balloons. Maybe I'll change my plan. No longer flower petals, now they're balloons. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing over here. So across from this one, I'm going to put a shape here. I'm kind of overlapping my lines so I know they're kind of even. If they're not even, it's okay, because it's just a color wheel, just some skill building. Okay, and I'm going to put another one here that's across from here. Now, because this is a summer enrichment class, you guys are going to be making a little bit more than just a primary and secondary color wheel. And if you want later on, you'll be able to put some shapes in between so you can do the tertiary colors. So I have right here my color wheel just started. Now, just so I can know where I'm going to put things, I'm going to start with just my 3 basic primary colors. When you put the primary colors on here, you really want to skip a shape every single time. So if I do this shape blue, then I'm going to skip this one, do nothing here so far, then I can make this one red or yellow. And then I'll skip that one and make this one the 3rd color. So on my plate, remember, less is more. You can't get the paint back in the tube, so it's much easier to add more paint than it is to take it away. So the amount of paint that I have there is like about the size of a dime. You want to conserve your paint so that you have it for later. You can put saran wrap over it. That will help it. So I'm going to put just like these 3 primary colors, so just a little daub of those 3 colors. Again, I can add more when I need it. And here's my yellow. So, okay, so I will answer all of your questions.
Miss Heather just joined.
I will answer all your questions when I'm done recording the video. All right. Okay, so there is, so you can just see that I have my color wheel here, and I have my 3 colors of paint right here, my red, yellow, and blue. So, of course, the first thing you're going to do is just take your colors, and remember, it doesn't matter which one you start with, and you're going to paint that shape in. So this is my red. Okay. And then I'm going to wash my brush off really, really well, because I don't want to get red into yellow yet if you're using the same brush. If you're changing brushes, you have more than one brush, you can just switch brushes for now so that you have a really clean brush. And this is why I use the paper towel. I want to make sure that it paints with clear water, and then I know I'm ready to go to my next color. Yellow is the weakest of all colors, so usually I always start with the yellow first. So I'm going to put the yellow over here. So remember, I skipped a space, and then I'm painting in the spaces. Now you might find on your acrylic paints there are some funny names on them. You might see the word hue, H-U-E. Hue is just another name for a color. It's a fancy name for the word color. So don't worry about that. Wash my brush off again before I do blue. Okay. Okay, dry this off. Okay, and then I'm going to do my blue as my last color over here. And you can see I really didn't use much paint, because acrylic paint, a little bit of paint goes a long way. You don't need a whole lot to fill the spaces that you're filling, okay? Okay, so I'm going to put my blue here. Okay, some of the other words you might see on your acrylic paints, you might see the word cadmium. Cadmium is usually an indicator that it's a very, very pure color. That's what they think the purest version of a primary or secondary color is. So they might call it a cadmium red. Okay. On this one, this is just a brilliant blue. You'll see it in different languages and sometimes. So this says cadmium red, but it also says light hue, because there's two different versions of cadmium red. There's a lot in color theory. There's a great guy who does some color theory videos, but unfortunately sometimes he doesn't always choose the right words and just put a bad word in there, but he's very intelligent when he teaches color theory, and it's very simply done. So I think I can share like one of his videos with you, but maybe two, but some of the videos I just can't share with you because you have to be in high school to watch them. So all right, so now I'm ready to do my secondary colors. So there's my primary colors, red, yellow, and blue. Now to make your secondary colors, you're going to actually, well, for the case of the yellow, you want to kind of make an equal mixture of both. So I'm going to take a little bit of yellow, okay, and I'm going to take a little bit of red, a little less red than yellow, and on here, I'm going to mix them together. And when you mix them together, you get orange, because yellow and red make orange. So with that lovely orange paint I just made, I'm going to paint this orange space here. And if I didn't make enough orange, I just go back, take a little yellow, take a little red, mix them together, and make some more orange. So that would probably be more of an equal amount of orange and red to paint that little balloon in, as we're going to call them now. So, okay, so there is my orange. Pretty well done. Okay, so I'm going to wash my brush off again. I'm going to dry my brush off again. And now I'm going to make some green. So I'm going to take my yellow, and I'm going to see the yellow and the blue are here. That's how you can tell what's going to go in there. So you mix that one and that one to make that one. So I'm going to take a little bit of blue. Oops, a little bit of blue. I'll take a little more yellow since I took a little too much blue. And I'm going to mix them together, and I'm going to get a green. Now you might just want to use the green that's in your set, and that's okay. But if you want to make your own green because you ran out of green, this is the way you do it. So I make my green, and now I'm going to paint this little balloon shape here green. Okay, so there we go. Okay, so yellow and blue make green, red and yellow make orange. Wash my brush off. clean my brush off. Oh, it's still a little green. I'm going to use some fresh water so that I can get my brush really clean. Now I'm going to make some purple. Now the purple is not going to come out maybe the way you think it is. It might come out a little dark, and that's okay. A little red in here. Mix, mix, mix. And yeah, the violet always comes out a little funny. Mine's coming out a little on the gray side, but it is a little purple. I'm going to add a little more red to that color. Okay. Make it a little more purpley, but this would be the purple. Again, if you prefer to use the purple that's in your set to start with, that's fine. Okay. So there's my basic color wheel with the colors in color order, and they have to be in that order because just like when we made the rainbow, these colors are all related to each other when they go around the circle here. So they all move into the next one. Yellow can move into green as it goes into blue to purple to red to orange. But there are colors in between that are called tertiary colors. And if you've ever seen on your computer when you pick font colors on your computer, there's literally millions of colors that your computer has been programmed to read. So how do you make those colors? Well, when you want to mix a yellow orange as a tertiary color, you're going to use a lot more yellow, and I use just a tiny bit of red, such a tiny little amount, okay? And I'm going to mix that together, and it's going to become a color that looks like yellow, but it comes a little golden. So here is that color in between. So there's that yellow orange. It's not quite orange and it's not quite yellow. So that's an in-between color. That's a tertiary color. So wash my brush off. So if I want to do the same thing with the green and make a yellow green, I'm going to do the same thing, but I always start with the yellow. Yellow is such a weak color that you always begin with yellow whenever yellow is in your recipe. And I'm going to put the tiniest bit of blue, teensy part of blue. You can always mix more blue in there. It's hard to mix more yellow to get it to be lighter, but when you mix these two together, you're going to get like a lime green. And that color would fall right in between the yellow and the green. So there's that color right there. Okay, then the same thing when you go from green to blue. I'm going to use, now in this case, I'm going to use more blue. And I'm going to take a little yellow, because that's how you make green, but I want it to be more on the blue side. I'm going to have to get a bigger plate. I'm going to mix it right here. And you're going to get like a turquoise color. So it's not going to be quite blue. It's going to be a little more teal. Okay, and so that color would be right here in this space. So it's not quite blue, it's not quite green, it's something in the middle, and so on and so forth. I'm going to come over here to the red yellow. So let me get some clean water, clean my brush. Okay, so I'm going to use a little bit of the yellow, try to avoid the blue that got mixed in my yellow. And I'm going to use a lot more red, so because I want this to be a red yellow. So I'm going to mix this. And when I mix that, it's not going to be quite red, it's going to be red-orange. And that red-orange is going to fall right here in this space right here. Okay, and then this will be red-violet. Which, just for the sake of TV of here, I'm going to actually use an actual violet here because this violet came out a little gray and I want it to be a little easier for you to see. So I'm actually going to take the violet itself and I'm going to mix it with the red. So I'm going to take red, in this case, since I'm using the straight violet, I'm going to do like almost an equal mixture of both. Okay, and I'm going to find a clean spot on my plate and I'm going to mix them together. As I'm looking, it's yep, it's a little less purpley. Let's get a little more purple in there. So it's a little more blue in there. All right, so okay, so I'm gonna paint this color right here. So it's not quite red, it's not quite violet. Now the nice thing about acrylic paint too is if you change your mind about a color, once this color is dry, which my violet is dry now, I can go back in and say, I made a better purple. I'm going to go paint over top of it. And you can paint over top of acrylic paint. So it's very forgiving when you don't put it on thick in order to fix it and completely cover it. So that's a nice thing about acrylic paint that you can't really do with watercolor paint. Watercolor paint only layers up. Acrylic paint will completely get erased by another color. So there it is, a little purplier of a purple. Okay, and then the same thing with my blue. So if I'm going to mix some blue violet, I'm going to use my blue, I'm going to use some violet. I'm going to put them together in a clean spot on my plate. Okay, and then I'm going to put them in this. Oh, that's a very purpley blue. That's even more of a purple, but you can kind of see how the color wheel goes around in a circle here. And so with your creativity, you can do whatever you'd like to make your color wheel come to life. You can even add more colors in between your tertiary colors if you'd like to. Okay, so I just put some little balloon things with my Sharpie here just to make it look a little fancy. If you happen to have some white paints or some other colors of paint, you can try mixing a value scale. We did value scales already, so we can do little tints and shades. But I took, look, tiniest little piece of white so that I don't waste my white, because again, all these colors that I took too much of, can't get it back into the bottle. So I'm gonna put a little shiny mark on my balloons, just to make them look a little fancy, like there's a little shine from the sun on them. Oops. Okay. Just for fun. I'm gonna get a little more paint because that paint's still wet. There we go. Okay, so now it looks like a party. So there is your color wheel. And again, this would go in the garbage unless you're able to cover it with saran wrap and keep the air out of it. You might be able to save some of your colors, but really don't use a lot of paint. A little tiny paint, no bigger than the size of a dime. Nothing more than that. Again, you can always add more. You can't take it away though. Once it gets mixed into a new color, like, you know, my blue is already in my yellow, and if I mix that, it's always going to be green. I cannot make yellow. So you can see I've just made this like kind of lime green with a little white in it. So it's kind of a, you know, a tint of green. So there is that color. So it was like an olive green in this case. So let's see what kind of colors you can make. Make yourself a color wheel. You can make some extra colors on the outside. If you look at some of the examples that I showed you, you can be very creative with the way your color wheel looks as a final product. But today is a skill building day, so you can learn how to mix colors with acrylic paint and start to play with what it is that you are working with. All right, happy painting.